Hello, and welcome to the Temporal 3 podcast. We're recording today from the National Training Center Conference in Las Vegas. And our guest today is Mr. Curtis Dupuis from Mircom. Welcome, Curtis.
Thank you.
So I want to talk out. Oh, yep. Let me show my badge, Curtis.
Conference badge.
Okay.
We're all official. So the first thing I'd like to talk about today is training and the significance and importance of training. Curtis, within your organization, within Mircom, how important is training?
Very important. And we have a training program for all of our ESDs. So anyone that's a Mircom dealer, they have the opportunity to be trained by Mircom staff on all of our systems. We have online training. And we also have classes that move throughout the United States where we actually bring in our ESDs and train them in person. They have the opportunity to actually build a panel, program a panel, and test the panel.
Awesome. Curtis, does Mircom focus on NICET certification?
Absolutely. I myself am also NICET certified level 4.
Awesome.
We also support NICET and also NTC. We're NTC partners. And support all that NTC does and help training people to get their NICET certifications.
When did you first get NICET certified, Curtis?
Well, that's a crazy story, actually. So I've been in the industry for 25 years. And the previous 20 years, I was under the impression that I really didn't need NICET. But as I saw in the specifications more often, I'm like, this is something I should probably do. And I went to a new employer, and they actually required NICET too. So this was in 2020, in the height of COVID. So getting your NICET certification wasn't quite easy at that time because getting scheduled in a testing center was not easy at that time. But what I did is I did my application. I called NICET. They said, well, you're actually qualified to do up to NICET 4 with your amount of experience. So what I basically did was I started applying for every test I could, and I was able to complete from level 1 to level 4 in a year. So in 2021, from 2020 to 2021, I ended up going from level 1 to level 4.
Wow. So initially you thought, I don't need no stinking NICET.
Right.
And then when it was a requirement, you pursued all the way to NICET 4.
And I realized, though, how much information I had obtained in the industry and how valuable it was, and to put it onto the certification was a big deal, right? So actually jobs would come up, they say, we need NICET 3 and NICET 4. I was qualified.
And are you a believer in training and certification at this point in your career now? Awesome.
Yep. So this is part of it too, like being here with NTC. I'm going to take a class tomorrow. I'm actually going to refreshen up on a little bit of advanced fire alarm design, keep myself in the know, because we know it's constantly changing, right? Code cycles, manufacturers, technology. So we're constantly having to learn new things in our industry.
And the design class is really interesting. Design is a career track all on its own, actually. Brian, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. A lot of our design students.
Oh, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
No, it's you, Brian. You go ahead first. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of our design students are technicians who got tired of climbing ladders because you get to a certain age and it gets hard going up and down those ladders, and it gets hard pulling those wires. And it's a great career path for a technician who wants to do something more, wants to continue in this industry, leverage his experience, but do something that doesn't require the physical effort that installation does. So I think we find that a lot of our design students are people that, again, worked in the field and said, okay, enough of this field stuff. Let me learn how to do work on the other side of it. Let me make problems for other people.
And I think Curtis wanted to weigh in on this subject too. Curtis, go ahead.
Well, the thing is, I started out as a service tech, install tech. And then, of course, we lost a designer in our office, and I had to step in and start doing design. And I was also managing an office at the same time. So the amount of hats I wore for probably about 5-6 years, I got all the experience you can think of in this fire alarm industry, including design. So I've done from systems that are very simple to systems that are very complicated. And so that's the design side I like to keep up on, because we keep on having things added into the fire alarm, including, bringing in two-way communications, monitoring, emergency radio communications monitoring, those kind of things. People have to understand that to bring that into the design also. Smoke control, right? So we start getting into more complex, like high-rise situations. You got to have UUKL smoke control systems, including a graphic display control, and all the confirmations with monitor modules and relay modules all working together. So advanced design is something I suggest people keep up on, because once you get in that situation where you're doing a larger project, you need all that knowledge on how these things operate with the fire alarm and interfacing with HVAC systems, elevators, you name it, right? We're doing a lot in a building that people don't think about when they think of fire alarm. There's a lot going on in the background, and those were the advanced design classes will help you out quite a bit.
Well,
Absolutely.
One thing that has really become more robust in the code is Chapter 7, which directly applies to design work and installation work itself. Bryan, what is Chapter 7?
Chapter 7 is documentation, and it's something that is a new chapter, relatively new, I should say, in 72. A couple of editions back, they broke out documentation from Chapter 10 and put it into its own chapter in the code, and actually took a lot of the annex material, a lot of the recommended material that used to be in Annex A, and made it mandatory code requirements. And now when you look at, in the latest edition of 72, when you look at the 2022 or 2025 edition of NFPA 72, for the minimum required documentation for fire alarm system design, you're looking at 18, 19 items. And when we talk about this in our class, a lot of students are like, I don't do that. My AHJ doesn't require that. As I understand, you always do what the AHJ tells you to do. But in terms of the code minimum is this, and things like pathway diagrams, narratives, things like that a lot of people don't consider in the design are part of the at least NFPA 72 required minimum documentation. May not necessarily be what your AHJ requires, but you need to be prepared to be able to offer it. And that is something we focus on in our design class, because it is an important part of the work. The job's not done until the paperwork's done.
Well, if my AHJ doesn't require that I follow the design requirements and the documentation requirements in Chapter 7, then I won't see it on my NISAT test either. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Since your AHJ writes your NISAT test for you, and your AHJ works integrally with NISAT to determine exactly what questions, like saying, well, we want to make sure we ask them about pole station mounting height, but not necessarily ask them about horn strobe mounting height type of thing. Obviously, please note my sarcasm here that your AHJ does not talk to NISAT about what will be on your exam. And particularly as you move to the higher levels of NISAT certification, documentation becomes even more important, especially when you get to level 2. You're going to start to see more documents. Level 3 is pretty document intensive, as well as level 4.
And knowing Chapter 7 and where to find those requirements is really a key aspect to being successful. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Knowing what the 72 requirements are, because a lot of times they're different from what the real world is. And unfortunately, a lot of our students fall into my HJ doesn't require that, so I don't think about that. And doesn't matter what the HJ requires. What NISAT's concerned with is what 72 requires, particularly in Chapter 7.
And Bryan, in my experience installing and servicing and taking over fire alarms, believe it or not, several of the fire alarm systems out there may not have appropriate documentation. So when I go in to take it over, I'm lacking documentation that tells me anything about the system. What do I do in those cases?
Yeah, well, 72 is very specific on this, that if you are taking over a fire alarm system, you are required to complete, at a minimum, a new record of completion that is within the scope of work that you are performing on that fire alarm system. So it's interesting that the ROC is required, because and this is a Chapter 7 requirement for taking over a fire alarm system, that if an ROC does not exist, you are required to create a new ROC within the scope of work. And if you're taking over a fire alarm system, how often do you go out there in the field and see a fire alarm system where the customer doesn't have the documents? Because, that's really important stuff, and there's a document box next to the panel, but, the documentation's never there. So when you take it over, you are required to at least complete a new ROC. New record drawings aren't necessarily required by the code, because you may not necessarily know where exactly everything is, but you are required to document within the scope of work what is the requirement or excuse me, what is that you're finding on the system within the scope of work with the new ROC. With retrofit also, other codes come into play as well. For example, the IBC has a requirement, basically systems above a certain number of square footages on a single floor, a certain number of devices require an addressable system. But the IBC does give a exception that this is not a requirement for a retrofit. So if you're retrofitting a fire alarm system, you don't have to comply with IBC requirements for it to be addressable. So you could theoretically retrofit a conventional system with a conventional system or a conventional compatible piece of equipment. You've also got
conventional systems are becoming less and less popular and available nowadays. So what options do you have if you don't have access to a brand new conventional panel?
Well, I think I'll throw that one to Curtis because that's something that I know our customers run into all the time, that they're trying to retrofit an existing conventional system that may have X number of zones, be a high number of zones or something like that, and the customer wants something more modern and something that's expandable. So Curtis, what do you offer as a solution for that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Actually, Mircom takes the retrofit to a new level. So on our FlexNet panels, we have an SLC0, SLC1 in the bottom right corner of our main CPU that allows you to add on conventional indicating device circuits, initiating device circuits, relay module outputs, and also control module outputs for NACs. So on the initiating side, you can take a initiating device circuit off your conventional panel. You can add it onto the module DM1008A. You can put in either 8 Class B initiating circuits, including 2-wire smoke detectors, water flow switches, supervisory devices. Or you could add on a Class A circuit up to 4 and do the same thing with water flows, tampers, smoke detectors, duct detection, you name it. You have a panel with IDC conventional circuits, you can bring them into this circuit board on the SLC0 R1 and retrofit. And also after you finish the install, say you wanted to convert now from the IDCs to an addressable circuit. You have the addressable module already available inside the FlexNet panel to now run an addressable loop out into the field to remove a zone indicating circuit and now make it addressable. We have another module on the relay side. So say you had some controls for HVAC on this conventional panel or some door releasing, you could literally put this RM1008A 8 relay circuit module in the fire alarm panel, connect it to SLC0 or 1, and then make these circuits use a class, Form C relay output to do those functions again that the conventional panel used to actually perform. And on the NAC side, so our panels, the FlexNets come with 4 NAC circuits from the factory, but you can also add on our SGM 1004S module to add NAC circuits to the panel. So say you had a conventional panel that had between 8 and 16 NACs. You could literally add on 2 of these SGM 1004Ss and pick up all those NAC circuits. And the thing also that's nice about it is it has a sync protocol in it for Mircom, System Sensor, Wheelock, Gentex. So there's several manufacturers also built in with the sync onto the actual SGM 1004S module.
Wow.
The SGM 1004S module is 4 NAC circuits. So if you already have the 4 NACs in the FlexNet, you can add these in increments of 4. And up to 8 modules be added into the panel. So you can put quite a few modules into this panel.
And what kind of current output do you have for those NAC circuits?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
What current output do you have for the NACs?
What current output do you have for the NACs?
Oh, I'm sorry. So on the SGM 1004S, you have up to 5 amps max per module.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can bring
Bryan,
in 5
do you think that could be useful for retrofits?
Absolutely. I love the idea. I love the idea of being able to retrofit a conventional system because you're going to be hard pressed to find a 10, 20, 30 zone conventional fire alarm system or, God forbid, a 40 or 50 short of eBay. And that you can put into an install with. This is something that you can put in an addressable system that's going to support all those devices, give you a bunch of zones, and give you the capability of growing it with addressable devices as the budgeting permits for the customer. and give you a customer system that is current technology and that can grow with their needs. That eventually, because obviously there are huge advantages to addressable, that you can say to them, look, let's get your system up and running now. Let's do the retrofit now, but as device replacement permits or as budget permits, let's modernize your fire alarm system.
Also, if you have a system that's actually gone inoperable, let's say you bring the Mircom FlexNet panel in, the time it takes to get it up and running again with the existing devices will help it a lot in not having to post Firewatch for several days while you're waiting for approvals and to get other circuits pulled. You can actually bring those existing circuits in and have them up and running faster.
Absolutely. And that's,
I love the innovation. I love the innovation that Mircom's bringing to the marketplace. That's fabulous.
Time is money, guys. And if Curtis brings up an excellent point, if you can save a couple days of Firewatch, that's a ton of money. Well, great. Well, Curtis,
of course, you also must take into consideration on your system that you're going to be replacing. You take and look at the compatibility documents to make sure all the manufacturers that are on that existing system do match up with our compatibility document, that you can add those onto these modules and be listed through UL.
Awesome. Well, Curtis, I want to thank you again for joining us today on Temporal 3. And for our listeners out there, remember to like this podcast and remember to subscribe.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again.
Signing off from the NTC conference in Las Vegas.
That's right.